Yes, recording. This is recording. What is more? Mayor, we are recording. Thank you.
All right, thank you, and welcome once again. This is the city of Cottonwood Heights. It's Tuesday, August 4th, 2020. It's now 4 minutes after 5. I also want to welcome, I think we have probably 75 to 100 people registered to be online with us. So we welcome them listening to our discussion this evening. I need to begin by reading a statement of determination by me as mayor of the city council of why this meeting is online and not in person as we wish it would be prior to the COVID-19 pandemic. So with the help of our city attorney, here's what I need to read. Pursuant to Utah Code annotated 52-4-2074, the city's mayor, as the chair of the city council, hereby determines that conducting the meeting of the city council on this date at an anchor location presents a substantial risk to the health and safety of those who may be present at the anchor location. The World Health Organization, the President of the United States, the Governor of Utah, the Salt Lake County Mayor and Health Department have all recognized that a global pandemic exists related to the COVID-19 coronavirus. According to the information from state epidemiology experts, Utah is currently in an acceleration phase, which has the potential to overwhelm the state's healthcare system. Therefore, due to the state of emergency caused by the global pandemic, I find that conducting a meeting at an anchor location under the current state of public health emergency constitutes a substantial risk to the health and safety of those who may be present at the location. So thank you for listening to that once again. And again, we welcome everyone. And also we have a special guest with us tonight from Salt Lake County. Again, my roots are very deep there, so we appreciate her attendance. And that's our Salt Lake County recorder, Rochelle Hobbs. And you want to talk with us about Property Watch. And then we'll excuse you when you're through because I know you have another meeting. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Mayor Peterson. I appreciate the opportunity. I'm going to share my screen with you here. Can everybody see that?
Yes, it's a very good picture of you.
Yes.
Oh, okay, thank you. I mentioned prior to this meeting that I was born and raised in Cottonwood Heights and actually attended Cottonwood High School. So grew up in Cottonwood Heights and I love the area. So it's an honor to be a part of this meeting and I appreciate being able to participate. And I'll be moving on here. Many people ask what the county recorder's office does. We record every transaction that has to do with real property. We maintain a database of over 14 million documents. For the property record to be accurate and complete, we have to record, abstract, index, and plat all the documents. This year so far, we have already recorded over 157,000 documents, and we are on target to have a record-setting year in recordation. We do all of this with 42 employees, and I am confident that I have one of the hardest working staffs in the county. This is a picture of our on-site crew. We have experienced unprecedented times as our office has responded to the COVID-19 pandemic. Despite these challenges, we continue to provide critical essential services to the public while remaining innovative. I'm here tonight to talk to you about one of the things that we've come up with that I'll touch on in just a minute. In addition to the pandemic and Property Watch that we have created, we continue to see an increase in volume. Our office has seen an average increase in documents of 40% in the first half of the year. July, we had a record-setting month. We recorded over 32,000 documents just this last month, and June wasn't too far behind. So we continue to see an increase in volume, and we are keeping up with the work and have been working throughout this pandemic, and I'm very proud of this team. In 2019, we worked to ensure collaborative relationships with our fellow recorders. and we've established some great relationships with them. And we met with the major title companies prior to the pandemic to ensure that the customer service that they're receiving from the recorder's office is what you would expect. And I've sought their feedback on changes, and we continue to make this office the best that it can be with the services that we provide. Community outreach and service is important to me. We visited all of the 16 Salt Lake County senior centers and offered them copies of their complete property records. We looked up thousands of records and were able to serve thousands of individuals by bringing our office and expertise to them. And this picture is us at the Sandy Senior Center. You guys don't have a Cottonwood Heights Senior Center, but that might be something that comes down the line. But we have been going out prior to that and offering this to the senior centers, and that was very informative, which leads us into the property watch. In recent months, our homes have taken on the added role of office, classrooms, and a refuge from the virus. One thing remains the same, and that is the American dream of home ownership. To protect your property record, we have launched a new free service called Property Watch. This service notifies Salt Lake County property owners when something is recorded on their property. This is a great resource that will help prevent title fraud while protecting your property record, and offers peace of mind, which is something I believe we all could use a little more of right now. We currently have over 7,300 registrants, and we're hoping to boost that number. If you were to visit the Salt Lake County Recorder's homepage, there is a Property Watch link right in the middle center of the website. From there, you are asked to provide your Salt Lake County address and enter an email for your contact information that would just strictly be used for Property Watch. And the parcel number will automatically populate once you've completed steps 1 and 2. And then you click apply. And then once you subscribe, you'll receive a confirmation email from the recorder's office. And it's that easy. Going forward, you'll be notified when something is recorded on your property. In some of our past meetings about Property Watch, we've been asked if it will go back before you subscribe, and it will only go current. So once you subscribe to Property Watch, going forward, you'll get those notifications. And then going on, let's see. Here's some of the feedback we've received about Property Watch. You can see there we have 301 registrants from Cottonwood Heights. We're hoping that maybe you could help us boost this number by making it available on your website, maybe giving information in a newsletter. However we can spread the word to your community, we would love to partner with you on that. As of this morning, as I said, we've had over 7,300 subscribers, Cottonwood Heights making up 301 of those subscribers so far. And then as you look at some of these words, powerful, useful, allows family to watch the status of elderly, vulnerable people for protection, easy for the public to track the recordings of their property. I believe the power of Property Watch is that you are able to stay notified of any recording that happens on your property. And with that knowledge, it's empowering to know that you'll be notified of any recording on your property. I want to thank you again for this opportunity. Please help us spread the word about Property Watch. And if you have time and it allows, I'm here for questions if you have any. I'd be also curious to know if any of you have signed up for Property Watch.
Well, Rochelle, thank you very much. And we'll allow some comments. One,
Okay, that would be great.
An outstanding program, and I promise you I'll personally sign up tomorrow. Council members, any questions for Rochelle? I think this is an outstanding program, and I think we can also commit to getting it in our newsletter and getting it on our website. Tim, hope you support that.
That would be wonderful, Mayor. When we presented to Sandy City, we had over 200 people subscribe soon after. So that would be wonderful if you could post it.
We'll get that posted.
That would be great.
I signed up probably about a month ago or so, I think. And I mean, I haven't got anything yet, but I figured I will when something happens.
Yep, you sure will.
Michelle, I think that's great because of all the fraud and different things. It really makes you feel a little bit at ease if somebody has some malfeasance, on titles and different things. I think that's a good protection.
Sure. Hey, that brings up a good point. Thank you for that, Douglas. There are private companies that charge homeowners $15 a month to subscribe to something similar to what our Property Watch does, free of charge. So, and it's coming from your county government office instead of a separate third party.
Does it apply to business owners as well?
Yes.
Good clarification. Yeah, it's not just your personal property then. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, wonderful.
Any parcel, any property in Salt Lake County.
Outstanding. All right, any further questions or comments for Rochelle? I think it's outstanding. It's kind of like a no-brainer. I think it's just wonderful when government can provide service like that at no cost. That's a real plus.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah. All right. Hearing no further comments, Rochelle, thank you again, and wish Leslie Reberg my best, and we'll hope to see you again soon.
Leslie's waving to you from 6 feet from me in the office.
Good for her.
Thank you
All
so
right.
much. We'll stay
All
on
right.
for a little bit and then we'll hop off. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Thanks again.
All right, moving forward. All right.
Thank you.
Back to the council. We'll now review the business meeting agenda for the rest of the evening.
Mayor, maybe we should ask Rochelle to stop sharing her screen so we can get back to what
Yeah.
we're doing.
Good point. That's probably why I don't see everyone else.
Did that work?
It did not.
Okay.
It's a prettier picture though, Rochelle.
Let's see.
Ah, there we
There
are.
we go. There we
Yeah,
go.
There we go. Thanks.
It
Oh,
just took a
thank
second.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks for seeing that. All right. But to the council, if you'll notice on your agenda, the next item is to review of the business meeting.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was the first thing I was.
Rochelle, there. Okay, we got the mute. Looking at the business meeting agenda later on this evening, we, of course, have the welcome, and I'll read the determination again. We'll have the pledge. Then tonight, I think we have a major challenge. And that challenge is that on citizen comments, Tim, I think we have over 75 to 85.
No, we have over 90 now.
We have 90 registered people to comment. If we gave all 90 registered people the opportunity to speak at 3 minutes apiece, anybody got quick on the math? How many hours is that?
It's close.
4.5 hours.
Yeah, 4.5 hours.
4.5 hours. I personally feel that's a little unrealistic to keep the council here till midnight just with comments. I understand, and Shane, you can correct me if I'm wrong, as a council, we have the right to limit the amount of time that we give. I'm wondering if it would be appropriate, and let everybody know at the beginning, it'll all be the same, two things. One is we can limit the time to 1.5 to 2 minutes, and I take the input from the council on that. Secondly, anyone who wants to submit additional comments, or they can submit that to Tim and we can enter it into the record. So council, quickly give me your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think we should do both, Mayor. Maybe limit it to 1.5 minutes and have them submit the rest via email.
I feel good with that. How do others feel?
That's good. That takes it to about a little over 2 hours. The other comment you may make is if someone has said something essentially similar to what you said, you can echo that. That may speed things up, but that's certainly up to them to choose.
They have the right to do that. Yeah, they have the right to do that. Typically, I've seen too, if they represent a group, they can do that. But I think my bet is a lot of people have strong passion about what they're saying. But yeah, they have the right to say, I echo what so-and-so said. But 1.5 minutes, and then if anybody has additional comments, if they'll submit it to Tim Tingy at the city offices, it can be entered into the record. Tim, go ahead.
Actually, it would be better if they submit it to the recorder's office that's on the agenda.
Okay.
That goes to a place, and then it's not in all of my
Yeah,
200 emails a day that I receive, so
yeah, I hear you. Yeah.
hard for me to keep track. So
Well, hopefully
Mayor,
those are, go
sorry.
ahead. Go
I
ahead.
just have a question. Are we allowed to ask those who are providing comments to let us know their address if they live in Cottonwood Heights? And I assume a lot of this is going to be coming from the rally that occurred on Sunday. And if they were at the rally, if they're a participant or something like that, I just, some background is always helpful to know.
Well, it's interesting. I asked our city attorney that exact same question earlier this afternoon. And Shane, hopefully I can repeat what you expressed to me, is we will ask for their name, and we can ask if they'll tell us if they're from Cottonwood Heights or not. We cannot require that they tell us where they're from. Correct, Shane?
Yes, that's correct. And while I'm speaking, I guess I would just note that we do have an ordinance that says that public comment is in a meeting is supposed to be limited to no more than 60 minutes. So the council can waive that, and but just going forward, you might want to be aware of that.
That's something that I hadn't been aware of until this week, that I feel uncomfortable limiting it to 60 minutes tonight because people haven't noticed that and it's not on our agenda. But in the future, we have the right to limit it to 60 minutes, unless the council feels strongly about limiting it to 60 minutes tonight. But I think we've given the impression that anybody can speak tonight. If we cut it to a minute and a half, that should cut it in half of what it potentially could be. Thoughts?
I agree. I think that would also be something that would be appropriate on the agendas, that public comment may be limited to an hour. That I think going forward, that may be something we ought to do, but it should be at least on the agenda, I think. So I would say, yeah, let's keep it to the minute and a half and do as what we've done in the past.
And I think as Christine suggested too, that I will ask them to please state their name and to state where they're from, you know.
Yeah, I was going to ask that same question. So
I would concur with Councilmember Bracken and say, like, maybe the next meeting we limit it to 60 minutes and let people know it will be the first individuals to get on and register.
Yeah. Okay. Makes sense to me. All right. That'll be our direction tonight. And hopefully those who are online listening will have kind of a heads up. So if they want to modify the comments and condense a little bit, they'll have an opportunity to do that. So appreciate that feedback. After citizen comments, we'll have a staff report, and I think it's a positive report from our finance department on budget and revenue for the last few months. So we'll have that as a staff report in the business meeting. And we have one action item that's approving entry into a federal aid agreement for local agency project with Utah Department of Transportation concerning the grant. This is on Wasatch Boulevard, 7650 South. I think we're all aware of that. It's part of the interlocal agreement we have with Salt Lake County. It goes back many years, I think before I was ever even on the council. Scott will probably remember it. We've modified the project to it's part of a little bit of a park and ride, Ferguson Canyon overflow, a few other things. Matt, you want to introduce that? If I've misstated something, or add to it, please.
Hey, Mayor, before that starts, I'm hearing people saying they can't hear the volume. I can hear you fine, but some of the people that are joining in cannot hear very well. Is that something Paula can adjust?
I'm not sure.
I've been adjusting the volume, so hopefully everyone can hear it. The one person that texted me says they can hear it fine, so I'm not sure who's having a problem. Is it on a Zoom meeting that they're having a problem, or the Mixlr that they're having an issue? We have several things going here.
Yeah, it's the Zoom, the participants in the Zoom meeting, correct?
Sometime it may also be internet connection, so.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, we'll continue, and hopefully Paula's done what she can do, and
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyway, Matt, maybe you can talk about that action item just briefly.
Yeah, really quickly, this is the project, as you're well aware, that used to be referred to as the Park and Ride, or it's up on the county property off Wasatch. This is the one where council asked us to work with Wasatch Front, try to get the funding, even though it was a CMAQ project. We were able to work with them, reduce the parking size to meet our agreement with the county, at the same time get the funding to be able to put in this parking area for that. And what this is the federal aid agreement. It's a couple of step process. The first step is we got to finalize the environmental document. They are requiring us to do that over again because we've changed the scope. But we've got the budget and we will be taking care of that. We're in the process of getting that done. The federal aid agreement allows us to start expending funds on this project. In other words, getting a designer, an engineer on board to start expending the funds and designing this project. So what you're going to be doing tonight is agreeing to the federal aid agreement, which ties us to that $1.3 million that we have there in this project. So.
And I assume too, for the council's information, we will have the opportunities to council to review the final design, specification, all those things before we do construction. Okay, any questions with that? Hearing none, that I think it's important to know as we review the agenda for the work session. It's going to be a challenge to finish our work session in time because we have a couple members on the council who have asked to have an update on pending litigation. So we will have a closed session at the last half hour of the work session. So we'll need to try and adjourn about 6:20 from the work session to give us a time to transition into another meeting, which will be the closed meeting, and talking about pending litigation. And we'll have a guest or so with us at that time as well. So appreciate everybody's patience. These are kind of challenging times. Then after that closed session, of course, we'll start our business meeting close to 7. Okay. Any questions on kind of what and how we're progressing through the meetings tonight? Okay. Hearing none, we'll now talk about Wasatch Boulevard design standards. You all received a packet, and there's been a lot of discussion about a variety of design issues with Wasatch Boulevard. So Mike Johnson, we'll turn it to you. And again, if you've got your packet of information, you'll see some, and he's going to show it now. So it's good stuff.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. This was anticipated as a discussion item at the last meeting, so that the packet and the document you received this would have been a couple weeks ago now. This is a draft plan.
I think it was sent out again in the last packet too.
Okay, great. This was a plan that was prepared and commissioned by UDOT, and it was done by their design consultant, which is HDR. It's the same firm that's doing the EIS, but this was a different division of that company out of Nebraska. That's a planning, and they kind of do these public design plans as part of their specialty. So this was prepared. The draft plan was prepared actually in January. The open houses that led into this were prepared prior to that in September and October. The reason for the delay between January and now is the previous EIS project management team had indicated to us that they were going to take this through UDOT internally prior to having us consider it. And then when the project management switched, that approach kind of changed as well. And they want the city to take a look at this first before they decide exactly what to do with it. But this document goes hand in hand with UDOT's prior commitment to looking at Wasatch Boulevard as a special gateway or a kind of a special design area. So this plan, and I'll run through it in about 10 minutes, is intended to talk about the aesthetics, the design, the themes, and some of the priorities in that regard. I will just jump right into the plan here. You can see it's bold. It's kind of hard to tell it's bold, but in the middle of the page here, the lane configuration, any decisions to widen or add capacity or provide certain speed limits or anything like that, those points are a little bit outside of the scope of this document. So this document is meant to provide a design aesthetic, and then that design aesthetic would be applied to whatever configuration is decided on through the EIS process. So this is a complementary but separate document to the EIS process. So again, the focus of this document was, and this was communicated back in September and October, was meant to be design and aesthetics rather than final layout or anything like that of that corridor. So I just want to make that clear as I go through this. And I will post this plan on the city website for the public to review after this meeting. So it'll be up there, but I'm just going to kind of hit a few important pages here. And the council has this document, and then the public will be able to review it. So this started in September 2019 with a visioning workshop that was held here at City Hall. You can see the room was very full. It was a well-attended event. And this September open house was what the design team calls a SWOT exercise, SWOT. And that stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. It's kind of a planning, visioning exercise that's meant to engage the public. So what happened at that meeting is all the attendees at the meeting were divided into multiple groups and given maps and charts and sticky notes and stickers and everything, and asked to provide feedback on what they felt the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats on Wasatch Boulevard were. These terms were all defined by the project team as that exercise took place. So you can see some of the photos from the open house here. This is kind of the summary of the response, the aggregate of responses that were received by the design team that evening. So you can kind of see the top 5 or 6 or so options are in bold and highlighted here. So among the strengths are, it's a scenic route, there's lack of light pollution, it's quiet at night, there's undeveloped land, there's minimal hardscape. Weaknesses, you can see high speeds is the top scoring weakness that was identified. So even though this plan doesn't recommend a certain speed limit, the design themes and the design recommendations are based around reducing speed. Fear of becoming a freeway, traffic congestion, cycling concerns, things like that. And opportunities and threats, including noise levels, high speeds, an opportunity to designate as a scenic route. So you can see there that this was all public feedback, and this served as a foundation for the recommendations in this plan. Along with the written feedback, each group of community members was given a map and provided comments on their maps. Those are all summarized here, but again, similar to what we saw in that summary of the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And then there was discussion of an overall design inspiration. As the team put together a design theme, what should be the inspiration for that theme? And really what it was is some of the kind of the historic values of this area, the natural landscape, the mountains, the old mill came to mind and was recommended in that type of aesthetic. So this is kind of the backbone of the design theme as it was developed. So the project team left and came back a month later for a 3-day design workshop. This ran in mid-October. It was a 3-day exercise. And with that kind of baseline from the visioning exercise, they started drawing out concepts. Concepts for intersections, concepts for what to do with some of the parcels along the boulevard, concepts for roadway design, and they during the day would draw them out literally by hand. These were landscape architects and designers, and then the public would be invited to come in each evening and provide feedback. And they'd say, we like these concepts, we don't like these other ones, and then the next day they would refine the concepts, add some more detail, and rinse and repeat. And they did that for 3 days. which ultimately ended up with a aesthetic design plan. And this is a kind of a 2-page plan. It's easier to see in a printed document, but I'll go through it very quickly here. This plan identifies opportunities. You can see the orange line indicates a shared use path. It highlights potential sites for improvements. This will be off the corridor, so obviously there would be some city, a lot of city involvement in this process. It's not a UDOT specific plan. Enhanced pedestrian crossings, gateway features, connections to trails. It talks about all those things, and then behind all that is again those opportunities and those threats, and we want to make sure this is a scenic aesthetic corridor and limiting speeds through design and things like that. So again, this is summarized with kind of the main points at the bottom here, but you can see it takes the north and the south end of the corridor and identifies these opportunities and areas that are further studied on this plan. It also identifies 7 specific areas, and there's a little more detail provided for these certain areas as far as what improvements could look like. These are just concepts, kind of inspirational design themes or renderings that show an implementation of the important design factors. And they're just various points throughout the corridor. So one is the North Gateway. This would be the intersection of Wasatch and Fort Union Boulevard at the mouth of the canyon. And the design team, along with the public input, found that this has an opportunity to be a real gateway area for the city, for the canyons, and for visitors. And they went to the extent of preparing these full professional renderings of, again, just a concept or an idea of the improvements that could be made to really develop that theme and that identity. So you can see that there. And you can even see, even in these renderings, they do show improvements, aesthetic improvements along the corridor as well. They took a shot at showing a theme of the Ferguson Canyon trailhead. We're talking a little bit more about that with some funding agreements tonight. There was some background information that was provided to the team, such as that funding agreement and some other opportunities here. But they rendered out.
Mike, I've got a question on that. If we can go back, but if you'll remember that, I'll come back to it.
Okay, we can go back. They showed some ideas of what a grade separated crossing could look like, how you could improve that to be aesthetically pleasing and connect east side of Wasatch to west. Again, I will caveat that the roadway configuration here is not a final or preferred configuration. So you'll see certain renderings show 1 lane in each direction, certain others show 2 lanes, certain show flex lanes, and that was intentional because that is not the focus of this plan. But again, you see improvements such as medians and trees and a shared use path and grade separated crossings to show what this, an idea of what this could look like if these recommendations were implemented. Continues south along the corridor, so we get down to Bengal Boulevard here, and we show what, perhaps an at-grade. There's a signal here, so this is an at-grade signalized crossing, but still emphasizing that crosswalk feature, with some design enhancements on each side of that. Again, further to the south, this would show, just maybe a refuge for the shared use trail users. This is down closer to the swamp lot, showing, a concept of repurposing that area into, a little more of a park, but not drastically changing what that is. This one is good. It shows a concept for a land use here, a little boardwalk through a stormwater refuge area, but it also shows a good example of what a mid-block, a non-signalized crossing could look like, with a planted median to be safe. And obviously something like this would be contingent upon, effectively reducing the speed of the road to make that safe. But this does show that, there are some design themes and ideas out there for how to safely cross pedestrians across Wasatch Boulevard when at mid-block, so not at a signal or not grade separated. And then it goes down, into the high T area where that high T signal is as well, and recommends some, some potential use for some of the undeveloped land there without fully redeveloping anything. So those ideas and themes were built out and included there, as you could see, and professional renderings done. And then the project team identified, through the public feedback and through the input they received, some of these key framework elements that really guided everything that they were recommending. And they're summarized here. You can see one is Wasatch Boulevard being designed as a parkway rather than, you know, just a sea of asphalt. So a special gateway kind of feel with landscape median, landscape park strips. Buffered bike lanes on the road, but also a shared use path off the road to accommodate all levels and skills of recreational users. It does talk a lot about bus lanes and flex lanes, and you know, I think we've refined our vision of this a little further since January, so that's something we can certainly revisit. But again, the takeaway here is accommodating transit in any future design and any future configuration of that road. And then they developed a conceptual cross section, again with the lane width being kind of left intentionally unknown at this point, but showing, you know, regardless of lane width, you can show buffered bike lanes, you can show highly vegetated landscape strips, medians, and all of these things really start to establish a design theme and an aesthetic along the corridor, along with bike lanes, and they're showing, you know, potential for flex lane, and obviously that may not be what ends up happening, but an idea there. And then they identify key design elements. So regardless of final design, you know, things that could be considered throughout the corridor to bring the corridor together and make it all cohesive. Natural landscaping, you know, consistency in tree types and landscape types and planting types, streetlight styles and design. Branding elements, you know, rather than just a standard metal bridge or crossing that you see, you know, really make an extra effort to make that more aesthetically pleasing with architectural design and materials, and, you know, perhaps some city branding. Low walls and fencing, and this, you know, this has an effect to create a welcoming pedestrian experience. Shows ideas for medians. You can have a typical median that's just standard landscape. You know, this is maybe a little exaggerated on the right here, but variable medians that show much thicker landscaping, and again would help achieve that slower design speed that is such a priority. And then at these mid-block type crossings, pedestrian refuge islands, you know, talking about gateway entrances and entrance features. You know, trailhead amenities and lighting. So it goes through all these different design elements that really help create a cohesive corridor out of this, in a parkway and somewhere that's unique and special. You know, they even go as far as recommending preliminary, you know, just an example of what a design aesthetic or a sign, a wayfinding package could look like there. And just a little branding and design really starts to change what a standard street sign can look like. And then they provide these kind of typicals. So typical intersection and types of improvements you could see, regardless of the location, regardless of the final, you know, whatever improvements are made there. These are kind of elements that can be used at each intersection to tie them all together. And it's, again, kind of the things that I just spent a few minutes going through. And then typical streetscape standards as well. Landscape medians, decorative lighting, shared use path, landscape parkway, you know, textured median pavers, even where there's turn lanes. You know, talks about a flex transit lane, so an emphasis on transit. And that is really, that is the summary of this plan. This is a UDOT plan. I don't know that it's a plan that the city can, you know, if it was desired, the city could formally adopt, but we can certainly look for ways to encourage UDOT to incorporate this plan into their design themes. And I think it's an extra way to partner with UDOT and help make the commitment that this really ought to be a unique design corridor. And if we had design standards built around the concept shown in a plan like this, you know, that would go a long ways in providing us comfort knowing that, you know, this type of treatment to future road projects would be considered. I'm happy to take any questions. I think my intention here tonight is to introduce this to you. If you have any feedback right away tonight, I'm happy to take note of that. Or if the council would like to review this, just in your personal time, I'm happy to take feedback after the meeting as well. And then I will follow up with UDOT and provide the feedback we have, and then ask what their internal process looks like. and how we can encourage them to formally adopt this or implement this type of document in some way.
Mike, thank you. Excellent summary of the document. I know Scott Bracken, you had a question. Let's
Yeah,
go.
before I forget, I'll go back to this page.
Yeah, there are two places that the Ferguson is shown at the beginning, and then on that page, just where I'd stopped you, it shows it's kind of across the street, but it's on the north end of that property, and it goes into what is private property. It looks like it's green. It would be green on a satellite photo, but it's not a park. And it's not public. It's private. It's actually the back of a church. It's an old ball field, I believe. And we may want to at least let them be aware of that. That's probably not a good place to even suggest you have a crossing. With its proximity, it'd probably be better to go down to Bengal or something. That doesn't look
Hold on.
quite right.
Mike's gonna
Anyway,
do that, right, Mike? You'll comment about that ball field.
Yeah, so this is the church-owned property that is actually being declared a surplus. So we are in conversations with the church real estate division to see what options are here. A trail connection does make a lot of sense here, to see if there's any sort of possibility to do that. This is also an area, whether it's where it shows on the plan or somewhere nearby, this is a great opportunity to try to find a crossing point, because there is this, this trail parking and public park that will be right across the street. It provides a great connection for the neighborhood on the west to the east side. Obviously, we are well aware that the private property issues are very important and need to be dealt with. It's something
that's information that we haven't discussed in a council meeting or anywhere else, that there might be a potential there. So,
yeah, and just for the council's information, and it's a little premature, but there is an organized effort by residents in that area, as Christine knows, to try and find a way to retain part of that open space for the community. And so it's at the very beginning phases. The church is still assessing values and things like that. I appreciate Mike Johnson just reaching out to them, but it will eventually probably come to council, but it's just been surplus by, or plans to be surplus by the LDS church here in the next while, but they're beginning stages. Yeah. Further questions of Mike. One question, Mike, I think you made very clear, and that is how we get this, because I personally is one, and I appreciate the design. I appreciate the boulevard feel. I appreciate the landscaping and the feeling that it gives to the community, which I think ties in with our master plan. How do we get UDOT to adopt this or make it part of either the EIS or what they're doing? Is that, since it's their document, is that already going to happen?
It could, and that's what I need to talk with them further about, and I plan to do that. I wanted to have this conversation first. They seem fairly flexible, and they indicated to me a couple months ago that they didn't want to do anything with it until the city had a chance to look at it and provide feedback. I would envision this to be, similar to the Wasatch master plan, where it was the city's plan, but UDOT was, they were involved at every step of that, and we're comfortable with the recommendations made in that. And I would anticipate this is kind of a similar thing, just with UDOT having ownership of the plan. But if it's a some sort of formal council recommendation for UDOT to adopt, I don't know what that looks like yet, but I will work to figure that out.
Well, yeah, I'd recommend that you get that information and still have the council have an opportunity to, again, comment further. Christine, your district, your thoughts?
Yeah, I did have a question. Thank you, Mike, for that presentation. I know that typically, as the mayor just described, any of these betterments are borne by the city at its own expense. Have you looked at, or could you look at other cities like Riverton? And I'm just making up cities. I don't know what cities that UDOT has put increased roads and then included betterments, to see which cities, who's bearing those betterments, and do we have a path forward to point to other cities that have received nice medians and nice overpasses that we can use to help us make that case? Because I see that as, if we can get a meeting with the governor or the governor-elect or lieutenant governor, whoever it may be, to talk about some of these issues, I'd certainly feel like we need to bring this up because it's a huge carrot for many residents who don't want to see an added lane, and certainly, as you know, you touched on speeds. I think that's important too. So I just wonder if we need some more facts that we can present should we have the opportunity to meet with some of those who will influence costs and budgets.
Yeah, I think the standard UDOT answer is that they make the minimum improvements, and then betterments are the municipality's responsibility. But that being said, I don't think Wasatch is a standard case, and I think we've heard that from all levels of UDOT that this is kind of a special gateway area. So I will figure out exactly what that means and where that line is drawn as much as I can at this point. Certainly, a lot of the improvements shown in this plan are on not city-owned property, but property outside of UDOT's jurisdiction, especially a lot of the intersection improvements. So some of that may fall on the city eventually to fully improve some of the intersection areas, but I will work to get clarification.
And as Christine suggests, being election year at the highest level in our state, which is the governor, it might be an opportunity to educate those running for office as well and our position, and get some type of commitment if possible. You never know. So,
okay.
All right. Any further comments or suggestions to Mike regarding this? I conceptually, it fits my expectations, and I think it ties directly to our approved master plan, the enhancements in the boulevard field. So, okay, hearing none, let's move on and to the East Jordan Canal project discussion. Matt, and I know Doug, you'll want to respond to this as well, but we'll turn it over to Matt Shipp to kind of introduce it.
Yeah, really quick, Mayor and Council, thank you. This is the East Jordan Canal Project Trail. This is the one where we've received funding from two different sources to put an asphalt trail on top of the East Jordan Canal section that is piped. It goes from Fort Union along the north side or the back side of Mount View Park and ends up down by the tennis courts. We were asked by you as the council to hold a public meeting to get public input on this. Our first meeting was being held the exact day the governor shut everything down. So we actually were scheduled that night and we had to cancel it 2 hours before. We've been sitting on this for a long time, waiting to see what would happen with this COVID, and not seeing any daylight, but also coming up on times for getting this project built. We felt it important that we go ahead, especially since the governor and the state and the county opened up some meetings. We went ahead and held a public open house for people to come in and comment. We did our social distancing, hand washing, followed all guidelines. And the comments I've sent you in the package are showing the written comments by those who did show up to the meeting. Just briefly and really quickly to summarize, the things that we heard in that meeting were a lack of privacy, and safety were the two big issues. Not only were they written down, but they were expressed a great deal in conversation for those two things. And there were some others that were pretty brief and pretty easy to deal with, like maintenance, which we will be taking care of that, and also dogs on leash and cleaning up dog mess, and those will be taken care of as well with this project. So in a nutshell, those are the comments. We wanted you to have those. And if you wanted to have a brief discussion on this, we have actually put this out right now for advertisement. If we don't go through with the project, we can stop the advertisement. But you asked us to talk to the residents, and that's what we've done. And these are the comments that we've received. One you saw was actually one of the residents went around to each home, and these were the things she got from them, and she typed up a sheet, and you have that as well. So that's where we are, and that's what's going on. We have to be done with this project by the end of October. So we are moving forward until we get the slowdown on this from you as a council.
Okay, Councilmember Peterson, this is your district. I know you were involved, so give us your perspective and feelings going forward.
been down there. I've walked the canal. I know that I understand the privacy issues. Sometimes it's the elevation is the problem. Some of the residents mentioned, could they make their fence a little bit higher to give them more privacy? Matt, I don't know, you and I spoke about this briefly. Was that an option that is allowable? And we have a lot of different egresses onto the property. I don't know if that's going to be a problem with people that have kind of built over the property line. I'm not sure how that's going to be handled, but their privacy was one thing, and maintenance with, I guess, walking dogs and that. It's a common problem where people aren't, cleaning up, and they don't want to have it a corridor. It wouldn't be any more of a corridor now than it is now. It would just be paved. But Matt, maybe you can give us a little bit of your information on that, the possibility of privacy issues with fences.
Sure. Where the trail is going is actually, it is elevated. We're not changing the elevation. We're putting it right on top of the pipe. So nothing has changed. Well, I shouldn't say that. We're probably raising it about 3 inches from what it is right now. So there is a little change in elevation. As far as the fences are concerned, I am going to have to defer to Mr. Johnson on this one, because raising a fence is an ordinance issue. There may be a process that people can follow. I haven't talked to Mike about this yet, so I'm catching him a little off guard. But that, I know in other places that I've worked, that has been an option, a chance to do that.
We did it at Mount View Park.
Yeah. So I don't know the process itself, but as far as the project is concerned, we're right on the cusp of the money. So adding elements to this project, such as moving a fence, raising a fence, or doing anything of that nature, really cuts into the project. So we're reluctant to do anything outside of what's already designed.
Matt, I maybe you misunderstood me. Is the elevation already exists is what I meant, not that it would be changed much. It was just the dynamics of the property, and you've got to keep a pipe at a certain height. It was more that the recess of the yards that they were concerned about. More traffic would mean more of the privacy issue.
Oh, I got that. No, that's right. That is correct. We're not changing any grades, and the grade already exists. And it is, the dynamics of the property would be changing with adding a paved trail through there. That is correct. But as far as them raising the fence, that's something I don't know the process fully on that. That would have to be answered.
I think you can get a variance to go up to 8 feet on a fence and there's a condition in there like we did at Mount View. If it's next to a park or something like that, then you can actually get a variance fairly easily to make your fence a little bit higher. But that what I would expect would be on the homeowner to choose to.
Well, that's what I thought. Maybe it wouldn't be a city issue, but it would be an allowable variance or whatever for a fence. And I don't know that all the properties would have that same issue.
Mike, you want to comment? Yeah.
Sure, very quickly. So we do have a conditional use permit that's allowable for fences to be increased up to 8 feet. And then there's a different level of that same permit that would actually allow them up all the way up to 12 feet. When you go over 8 feet, you need consent from any adjacent property owner that's affected by the increased fence. So in this case, it would be, I guess, Salt Lake City, which I can't imagine would be an issue. But we do have a process that would entitle that up to 12 feet.
So Councilmember Peterson, are you comfortable having staff proceed?
I believe so. Like you say, we did have input, and of course, more people that are affected by it obviously had a higher concern, and therefore they would be able to. I don't know. It's very difficult to be able to please everyone along that corridor. I think we need to try to do anything we can to help mitigate it, but it is going to be, I know other cities that have had similar projects, they had the same fears that some of the individuals on this pathway are worried about, but it hasn't been a problem in those cities that had the fear. I think it will help it to be maintained, and I think that it will be an added feature ultimately. So I don't believe that I think we do the best we can with what we've got, and I think it will be an added feature that I think they will appreciate.
And I appreciate the fact that it's part of our city-wide trails master plan and fits into that and connects to Mountain View Park and things like that. But someone else had a comment that I cut you off. I'm sorry.
Mayor, I just want to reiterate what Matt said. There is very little wiggle room to add any, if people are requesting raising their fences and we pay the cost of that, there's not opportunity really to do that. I just want to make sure that's clear with the council.
Yeah, I think it was clear that we said that there's a process where they could do it, but it would be at their expense.
Yeah, and Tim, just to clarify, I don't think that has been a request of the city to take that project on. I think maybe it's more of a use issue that could they do that if it was a very serious problem as far as privacy.
Okay.
And
Oops.
Christine, go ahead.
no, go Tally.
I was going to say, while we're talking to Matt Ship, can we just pause and give him kudos on the slurry project? That's been a daunting task, and it's been very impressively handled. So good job, Matt.
Thank you. I will pass that along to those who I forced to do that kind of labor. So we will pass it along. Thank you.
Well, and to the whole council, it's part of the 5-year road maintenance plan that we've approved over the last couple of years. So it's good to hear. And I, as the mayor as well, have got a lot of positive comments, and we've had to be flexible and things, and it's worked out well. Christine, go ahead. You had a comment.
I think I know the answer, but for those along that corridor that might want to increase their fence, we can't give a waiver of any fees that they could go through if they wanted to increase the height of it. I feel like we've asked that question before, and I think that's the answer you've given.
I'll say that for consistency purposes, no. We haven't done that with others or even other projects, and I would say no from an administrative perspective.
I'd be surprised if that big of a fee, is it, Mike?
It's $250.
250?
Yeah.
Well, again, it's something that if it becomes an issue with someone, we can always talk about it again, but yeah. Right, any further questions? Hearing none, I know our time is short. Matt, I think that gives you direction, so appreciate the efforts. And as Councilor Bruce said, thank you for the story seal. I know in her district especially, there's been a lot of activity in a couple other areas. So yeah, it's good to see some things are moving ahead.
No,
Okay.
that council, thank you for approving those funds. That's big out there, believe it or not. People are loving it.
All right, moving back to the agenda, item C under staff reports is, again, how much time do we have? We've got another 20, 25 minutes, and I apologize again, not having more time. It's just challenging, with everything that we're dealing with. Just real quickly, before we do that, just a reminder that we have a rolling car show on August 22nd going through the city. If you have any questions, you can check with Ann Etchell, but I'm sure we'll send something out to the council. It should be in our I think it was in our newsletter, if I remember correctly. With that being said, talking about police policies and training in our discussion the next 20, 25 minutes before we go into closed session, I think everyone wants to talk briefly, or at least have some comment from the administration on Sunday evening's situation. We've had, obviously, I've still got over 175 messages on my phone right now that I've not yet been able to respond to. And so for the audience, the question about what do we do as a city when there has been use of force? How do we administratively investigate ourselves and how that works? So Tim, I'm gonna let you introduce that, and let's get the clarification of how that proceeding. And then if we have time, we can talk about, I've got a list of 8 or 10 items that we're going to discuss as far as our training and police policies, but let's see what time we have left so that we can move into closed session by about 6:20, 25.
Well, let me just, thank you, Mayor. Let me just start by saying, and you're all very aware, it's been a difficult time in our city. With the events that happened on Sunday night, we wish that those events wouldn't have happened, that there wouldn't have been contention and wouldn't have been some of the things that occurred that evening. We've had a lot of input, and you'll get a lot of input tonight about this issue. There's so many differing viewpoints about the issue, just from the input that I've received. It's been hundreds of phone calls, hundreds of emails, and the viewpoints are everywhere. From concern about what happened from a police perspective, for support of what happened from a police perspective, from all of the elements. And I don't want to, I can't sum it up anymore other than it's been a difficult time for a lot of different people, and I recognize that. And anyway, we have a lot of work to do to move forward and evaluate that incident and the situation. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be starting with the criminal allegation elements and the arrests that have occurred and other elements, and evaluating all of that. We're going to be getting that information together and sending that to outside agencies to review, to have a different view of that, independent view from our organization. We're also going to be conducting an internal investigation as we do, and review the actions that occurred and go through that process internally as a city. I'm going to be involved in that, as well as the police. And then we're also going to move that to an outside review of the incident as well. An outside review of an independent agency. In this process, I've had the governor contact me directly, talk to me about what has occurred, offer assistance. We'll likely have assistance from an outside agency, being the state, in reviewing this. And we're going to take it a day at a time in the review, and we're going to move through it effectively, methodically, and also very thoroughly, and working with the other agency and working through what we do. And so that's going to be our process. We take this process very seriously. We take it, or we feel it is an important process that we go through in doing all of these things to help understand the whole implications of that, from the protest to what actions the city took and other aspects. So that is going to be our focus. There'll probably be a lot of questions. We've had a lot of questions on that, but that is going to be the process that we're going to pursue, and I've already started those processes. So that is where we're at with that. If you have specific questions on anything related to the incident, want police to talk about perspectives related to that, we're happy to do that at this point and answer questions. And then, Mayor, as you said, talk about other things if you want to as well.
Well, one clarification that maybe to preface what you said is that this review is an administrative function. It's not a council function. Even though we'll have a report and updates, there's maybe some things for, but it's administrative function in our form of government.
Correct.
And just to clarify, Tim, you said the state will be the outside agency?
There'll be other agencies involved in some of the review of this, which is yet to be determined. The state will be the outside agency reviewing the incident after our internal investigation.
Are
Will they
we,
run concurrently? Sorry, will they run concurrently, the state and our investigation?
No, most likely not. Most likely our investigation will occur and we'll provide all the information to them. Chief Russo, correct me if I'm wrong.
No, you're correct. We have some criminal charges currently. We have more to come, and we can't commingle the administrative investigation with the criminal charges, which take precedence.
Am I safe to say that some of that outside would be both the county attorney's office and the Utah Attorney General's office?
Yes.
Again, go ahead, Scott.
I know that there's some public interest. I guess, is there an intent, Tim, or do we have a plan to at some point release some of the video from the body cams on the officers, or put together something like that from our side? Is that in the works? Is it planned, or what's our policy there?
The body cam videos could be viewed as evidence in criminal proceedings, and so under grandma, those are protected records until the investigation is completed. So that's what grandma would say about that, I believe.
Well, that's a pretty solid answer. Okay. Thank you, Shane.
While we're talking body cams, Salt Lake City just had their 7 major points of reform. One of them was on body cams specifically saying that they would not be turned off and that there would be disciplinary action for the officer if they turned them off or if they hit mute. And that's something really simple we could implement immediately policy-wise. Because if we fail to capture that information or that interaction or that audio, it's lost forever. But once we capture it, then we are able to do what we need to do with it. Could we make that policy change as a council, like immediately on the spot?
We have a policy on body cameras, and our policy was derived from the negotiation with the legislature when we were adopting the whole body camera program. And we conform with that policy, which includes exactly what you've already talked about, that has been in existence, and we follow that policy.
I think in response to what you're saying, I think that, I mean, I read the 8 or 9 points from Salt Lake City, and fundamentally, I think a lot of what Mayor Mendenhall is doing is kind of basic and logical, and conceptually, just at a quick glance, I was supportive of almost everything they said. But I think with that issue, with about 8 or 10 other issues we started talking about last time, we need to continue these meetings further. And again, in between meetings, if there's a high priority you want to deal with first, work with Tim and get it on the agenda, and then we can see what's already in place or what semantics we want to change to make it clear. But I think we're going to talk about a lot of those things going forward and see what's already in place and what we need to tweak. But if you haven't read what Salt Lake City has done, I didn't see as anything as earth-shattering, but things that I fundamentally, at a glance, all made some sense. But
yeah, common sense. Could we then maybe have staff review what our body cam issues have been in the past and why we have so many times where they're not on and they're not, the video or audio are not working, and maybe we incorporate that disciplinary step to ensure that they are left on.
Well, the point on the agenda going forward, the discussion of body cams will be on the agenda. I think we talked about it last time. I just don't.
So are we going to carry over to the next meeting to discuss policy reform?
Absolutely.
Since tonight we're kind of talking about the events over the weekend.
We want to make that clear because of the hundreds of calls we've had. We have another 10 minutes before we need to probably adjourn into our closed session. So if there's a couple comments about what Tim introduced, I think we can use that. Or if there's a quick comment as to what things you would like to see on future discussions, we can get that on the agenda. I can tell you which ones I already have on that agenda, which is body cams, hiring, SWAT, civilian review boards, the social media policy, drug testing. Those are things that a lot of them we have in place, but we're going to review that as a council so that we're educated and can make comments.
Mayor, I have a quick, since we're talking a little bit about body cams, I understand a number of body cams were ripped off the officers, and maybe I can get a clarification if that's 1 body cam or 2, and then the police cars that were parked during the Mill Hollow situation that had keys removed. Has that been taken care of so that we don't have further problems. And if somebody is caught on a body cam and they do rip it off and get away with that, that's an issue that we need to look at as well.
So one of the tactics that was used was the pulling of equipment off of officers. So several body cameras got pulled off of officers, and we were able to get all of them but one back. We still have one camera outstanding, and anything that the officers had on was getting pulled off of them. Keys, magazines, any tools they had on their belt, those things were getting pulled from them. We did lose a set of keys to a car. A brand new car that we locked the car down and we had to have rekeyed, and we had to have the office rekeyed. But yeah, and we have some video evidence of that and an idea who did it. So we are working on that.
Is several more than 5 body cams?
I'm sorry?
When you say several, is that more than 5?
No, it's probably around that number, 5.
And so it would show everyone that was ripped off.
Yeah, every officer that was in a physical confrontation had their body cam pulled from that one point.
Every officer that was in an altercation had their cam ripped off.
They tried to take the cameras off of every one of the uniformed officers that were there, yes.
That would have to be like a premeditated plan, or we're not securing them correctly, or maybe we've got something wrong with their vests.
No, we're securing them the best way that we can. They're secured to their uniform. But I mean, it's an external piece of equipment on a thing, and they can be pulled off.
And again, during the administrative review and investigation, I'm sure that'll all be summarized and included and reviewed, and then have outside review as well. Scott, you had a comment?
No, mine was, I think Dan actually answered it, so I'm.
Hey, Mayor, there was one other on the Salt Lake City's. Sorry, did I cut somebody off?
Well, Christine.
Go ahead, Christine.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on, Tally. I can come after you. I've got it in my.
Okay, Tally, then Christine.
There was just one other point Salt Lake City made that's something free that we could do at no cost and implement immediately, would be the implementation of having consent searches signed. When we go to do a search, we've run into so many complications where they come back later and say that wasn't consented to. And if we just had those signed at the time, it's a practice I know the FBI has used for over 40 years. So that's something free to the city, and it would really help with our litigation issues.
Have we had some litigation issues associated with that? And
that was,
please?
I think we've had a lot of litigation issues.
On our consent to search form, we do have a sign on our consent to search form.
So every search is signed for. Go ahead, Christine.
Oh, sorry, was that a question for Lieutenant Bartler? I don't know if he answered it.
Did you say yes? We have every search is signed for?
If we ask for a consent search, we have them sign a form.
And we ask every time?
On consent, yeah, we have to ask for consent.
So every search has a consent tied to it?
No, not every search has a consent tied to it. There's different kind of searches. Consent searches, we ask for them to sign for it. A probable cause arrest searches are part of probable cause.
Okay, I'm probably misstating it then. I think every search should be a consent search.
Again, something that I need to work with Tim and allow the council to give us a list of topics we want to discuss in this realm going forward, because there's too many. We need to prioritize those so that it's not just a topic that we throw out, that we're able to end the discussion with some position. So
I want to make sure we don't cut Christine off.
I know. So I just want to let you know that I didn't want you to feel, Tally, that we're left it dangling. We will bring some of these back at like body cameras and SWAT and some of those things, and we will do that. Christine, go ahead.
Sure. I think I have maybe just 3 questions. One question is just maybe about process. City Manager Tingy, can you help me understand the timing of the report, our internal report, and then those who will be conducting the report, if you're allowed to say that? I just want to understand, are we 3 months out, 1 month out, 10 days out, so that I have my expectations set?
And I'll have Chief Russo and Lieutenant Bartlett add to this, but we're most likely months out because we have to begin the criminal allegations and proceedings has to go forward, and that has to be in place before we move into the other elements. Correct me if I'm wrong on that.
No, you're correct. We're not going to adjudicate the criminal process in a municipal council meeting, so we have to let that process evolve in the court, and that sometimes that takes time.
Yeah, I think what I'm envisioning, which may be different than what the police force is envisioning, is I see, and I'm going to use my words carefully here because I think we should be thinking about our words. What occurred on Sunday, I believe, was a rally and a march. I don't believe it was a protest. So I think we should stop using words like riots and protests and use the word that I think was ultimately what the event's intent was. But I guess what I want to know on a higher level, like sort of just timing. So, you know, the dancing and the food trucks occurred at this time and went to this time. And then from this time, they started walking. And at this moment, the police, you know, set a barricade. And at this moment, every police force in the county was called, and that number is X. And like just very high level, like what were those steps that are happening? Because I noticed that occurred on Sunday. We were alerted of a march or rally, whatever it was, on Monday. We were able to have an emergency meeting, which I, you know, wish we had on Saturday. Hindsight's 2020, but we had an emergency discussion on Monday, and I think we were able to, I felt comfortable about the plan going forward. I haven't heard anything yet to say otherwise, but I felt like what happened last night was well done by our staff and our police. I drove through the site later at night, as I shared with City Manager Tingy. I saw some policemen talking to some kids that were sitting on the curb at about 10 o'clock at night with some signs, and he was so kind to them and said, stay here as long as you want, please move back, we don't want you to get hurt. I mean, the whole feeling as I drove by that was really warm. I felt warm and I felt good about it. And so I really want to understand, how could we go from Sunday night to Monday night? And if we're not going to have a report for 3 months, I would request that anytime we get wind of a rally or march in our city, that we as a council request an emergency meeting with staff to talk about how we're going to do it. Because I know Holiday has had events like this, and I've heard about the preparation of their police force, which was pretty much like what happened last night. And I just don't want to replicate what happened Sunday night. I want to replicate what happened Monday night. I'm proud of our city, but I think that there's some things that we should understand as to what went wrong on Sunday, so that we can be, as a council and as a city, prepared not to see that again.
That actually reminds me of the comment another comment that I'd had, that maybe we need to look at our permitting process, because one of the things, and I hope I'm not out of place to say this here, that we had heard was communication with the groups beforehand with the police department would have probably changed that outcome radically. If there was a group that had said, we would like to do this and this and this and this, and Lieutenant Bartlett or the chief or whoever could have said, okay, let's make it, and let's make it work this way, that probably would have avoided the entire hassle. So if we need to change our permitting process, even with COVID in place, I think that's probably something we should look at.
You know, to piggyback on that, Scott, this particular group has conducted this same little walk, little stroll in 8 or 9 other communities before they came to Cottonwood Heights. And they have 100% before they arrived in our city. They've never, ever had an incident of any kind.
This question is how much conversation. I had one of my constituents tell me last night, well, in Salt Lake they were doing it and they were cooperative. I says, well, that's a very good point. We need to deal with that. And if there's a way we can, I think we should. But we're kind of past time. So Christine, go if you have the more.
Well, one response quickly to Christine is I think she made a good point, and I think that the type of internal review is a little bit unclear because one, we have the legal part, which is tied to the state and to the county attorney's office, but maybe we can get a better handle going forward and more information to the council, even if it's by email, as to some of the things that will be included in that report so that we have a good understanding of how in depth it goes. Because, you know, it's like Christine says about if there's some explanation of some of those things, if that will be coming out. And the uncertainty of the time it takes, maybe that can be tied down a little bit so we're more clear. Tim, is that possible or?
Yeah, I'll work with police and try to give you some information on that.
Christine, do you have another question?
Yeah, so go ahead, Christine.
And we're out of time here in a minute. Yeah.
No, I'm good. I think I made my 3 questions.
Sure.
I got one more point while we're talking about, Chief Russo just mentioned further criminal charges. And I was actually thinking we should propose dropping all charges until our internal investigation could be complete. We could always refile those charges at that time if they prove to be as warranted as would be required. I think that we should drop all charges on everyone until we complete our investigation and know what we're really looking at.
I'm not sure the council has the authority to drop charges.
Tim?
We're going to be submitting this to an outside agencies, and they're going to be doing the investigation review of that. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, Chief.
But you said that might be months out.
No, you're correct, Tim. And it's their purview.
Sorry, this is Christina. Now I'm sorry. I'm feeling a little confused. So can you just summarize before we go into closed session, Team Manager Tingy, who is doing what third-party investigations? What are we doing? What are other people doing? The timing of such, as much as you can. I understand that you don't know that, just ballpark. And then maybe help me understand Tally's questions. We as council cannot waive any charges, but is that a possibility perhaps? I don't know. And with reinstatement after the investigation.
Criminal investigations are included first. Outside agencies, prosecutors are going to deal with that. Most likely the state and district attorney's office, they're the ones that are going to be doing that independent review. Our internal investigation after that review, we've started our internal investigation, but that can't be concluded until the criminal investigations and process occurs. And then the last is the outside review of the incident will be done by the state of Utah Attorney General's office. The timing on those, a lot of it on the criminal investigations, I don't know on how long that's going to take. Weeks, maybe months, I don't know, because those outside agencies will do that.
Now I'm confused. You flip-flopped it. 3 steps, outside and then inside and then outside?
Correct. I haven't flip-flopped anything. I said exactly what I've said before, but those are the 3 steps with that.
So the criminal investigation entails what exactly? The first step 1.
So we have reviewing all video, all reviewing all reports.
You're saying we, and Tim just said.
Hey, Tally, let him finish, please. Yeah.
They are we.
We have, we've collected all the reports. We've collected all the video, all the evidence. We will submit that to the district attorney's office as soon as possible. I'm hoping to have the first set of charges out tomorrow. Of course, there is ongoing stuff. We're still trying to find equipment and other people, and we're trying to get that out to the DA's office as soon as possible for their review. It's the DA's or the DA's office is the one that will decide if those charges are warranted, and they will file the charges. We do not file charges. We submit what we believe to them, and then they make the determination and they file those charges.
And again, as Tim just mentioned too, is hopefully it's been 48 hours. It's still a lot of discussions going on. But we will get further information, especially hopefully with timing of how things are progressing. This is not a one discussion serves every question right now. And so we'll continue to keep the council informed and how it's progressing and if anything changes and as we get more clarity. I'm sorry to cut people off because we have a business meeting at 7. We need to move into a closed session to talk about pending litigation at the request of a minimum of a couple of our council members. Okay.
I'll move that we close the work session, open a closed session for the purpose of discussing pending litigation.
Okay, I have a motion by Councilmember Bracken. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
It's been seconded by Councilmember Peterson. I'm going to call for a vote. Councilmember Bruce.
Yes.
Councilmember Michael.
Yes.
Councilmember Bracken.
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson.
Yes.
And I will vote yes. We'll now adjourn to our closed session to discuss pending litigation, and we'll reconvene at 7 p.m. for our scheduled business meeting. Thank you, everyone. Talk to you in a minute.